to all. So this uh, this is a sample video which I am making for the course operating system. So it will be an introductory video which touches on the basics of operating systems, and also it discusses little bit about exceptions or error handling, interrupts, and little about scheduling. Okay, let me start. So to start with, what is an operating system and why we need an operating system? See, operating system is a software which enables the user or the application programs to communicate with the hardware effectively. So in the sense that an application program or a user cannot communicate with the hardware, with the physical hardware of a computer without operating system. The operating system is the interface through which the user or the application programs communicates with the hardware and get the works done. So now what is the hardware? The hardware may be a processor, it may be memory, RAM, it may be hard disks, it may be any peripheral device. So when you do any task, the task is basically achieved through these hardwares. But we don't interact with the hardware directly. We interact with the hardware through a special software, and this software is called as operating system. So as a user, we use certain application programs like MS Word or PowerPoint or any other, say Python or Java program. So these are application programs. These application programs also cannot communicate with the computer hardware directly. Rather, they take the help of the operating system, and through operating system it is communicate. It communicates with the hardware. So operating system provides one level of abstraction. That's it. So what are the core functionalities of operating system? So these four can be understood as the core functionality of operating system. Memory management. So operating system decides about memory management. That is, say it decides like how much memory should be given for each process. So what is a process? All those things we'll discuss later. But still, memory represents RAM. So your system has some limited amount of RAM. How this memory or RAM should be effectively utilized, and to whom it should be given, to which program it should be given, to which program how much memory should be given, all these things will be decided by the operating system, and this job of operating system is called as memory management. The next is processor management. What is processor management? Sometimes your computer may have more than one processor, or even it may have only one processor. If it has only one processor, and if the system is running more than one program, then which program should get the processor and how much time it should get the processor, these factors will be decided by the operating system. Or if your computer has more than one processor, then how this processor should be effectively utilized, which processor should be given for which process or which program, and how much time. Okay, so this decision basically it will be taken by operating system. So this particular activity of operating system is called as processor management. Then comes device management. What is device? Device can be anything, any hardware device. It may be printer, it may be mouse, it may be a plotter, or any other hardware device which is connected to your computer. It may be joystick. So who will use the device? Who, in the sense, which program will use the device, and how much time it can use the device. So this is decided by the operating system. So this functionality of operating system is called as device management. And the next comes file management. So file represents the files that we store in the computer. It may be a folder, file, or anything. It may be a Word file, it may be a PPT, it may be a PDF file. So which file should be given to access to whom, and whether a particular time, if one program is accessing a particular file, and if another program is requesting for the same file, should the access be given or not. All these factors will be decided by the operating system. So this functionality of operating system is called as file management. So basically we can say that the operating system has these major functionalities: memory management, processor management, device management, and file management. And operating system is a piece of software which acts as the interface between the user or application program and with the physical hardware of the computer. Okay, so this diagram better explains the concept of operating system, what we have discussed so far. So if you see, so this innermost circle represents the physical hardware of a computer, which includes processor, RAM, hard disk, all peripheral devices like mouse, keyboard, etc., etc. Okay, the next layer what you have is an operating system. So operating system is the one which can directly communicate with the computer hardware. Okay, so operating system is nothing but a set of programs. These set of programs, the set of programs of the operating system which directly communicate with the hardware is called a system software or kernel, or you can also call that part of the operating system which can directly communicate with the hardware as kernel. See, operating system also, sometimes your operating system may also have some application programs. These application programs, again, it will not be able to communicate with the hardware directly. For example, let us take Windows operating system. Windows operating system comes with a particular tool or a software called Notepad. But if you say Notepad, you cannot call Notepad as a system software. Notepad will be called as an application software, even though it comes as a part of the operating system. So Notepad, if Notepad want to access the hardware, it cannot access the hardware directly. It should access through operating system. That is, if you are saving something, if you are writing something, and if you want to save it in the disk, Notepad cannot do that directly. It will take the help of the operating system, and then it will get it saved. Okay, so the point I'm making here is, operating system is a collection of programs, and operating system contains two types of programs or softwares. The first type is the one which cannot access the hardware directly, and the second type of programs or softwares are the one which can communicate with the hardware directly. Those part of the operating system which are highly privileged, that is, which can directly access the hardware, those highly privileged programs are called as system softwares or kernel. So mostly we use the term kernel. So kernel represents the core or highly privileged portion of the operating system which can directly communicate with the computer hardware. Okay, and in the outermost layer what we have is application software. So application software may be any softwares which we are using. It may be a third party software, or it may be MS Word, it may be PowerPoint, it may be Java, it may be Python interface, any third party software which we install on top of the operating system. All these are nothing but application softwares, and these application softwares, it cannot communicate with the computer hardware directly. It will communicate with the computer hardware through the operating system. Okay, it will call some method or functions in the operating system, which in turn will create a system call, and that will get the hardware gets accessed. Okay, so basically this slide, what it says in the sense, so the computer hardware is the innermost circle represents the computer hardware, and then comes operating system. Again, in operating system there are two types of programs: the programs which can directly access the software hardware, and the programs which cannot directly access the hardware. This part of the operating system which can directly access the hardware is called as kernel. Kernels are high privileged programs which can directly access the hardware. And there are also some programs which cannot directly access the hardware, but still it is a part of the operating system. Example, Notepad. And then comes application programs. These may be third party softwares and which we install in our system and we use it. These third party softwares cannot access the system hardware directly, rather it will access it through the operating system. So this gives a very brief introduction about operating system. Okay, now next what we will be discussing is, basically we have two types of operating system. One is called as single user operating system, the other one is called as multi-user operating system. So this slide discusses about single user operating system. So what is a single user operating system? A single user operating system is one in which only one program can run at a time. You cannot execute or you cannot run more than one program at a time. And this one program will use the entire resources of operating system, entire resources of the computer. So what are the resources of the computer? These are the, so here resources in the sense we mean the hardware resources. So the hardware resources are processor, memory, disk, network interface card, display, keyboard, etc., etc. So all these hardwares will be used only by a single program. The hardware just executes a single program, and this program has direct and complete access to all hardware resources in the machine. So this type of operating system which supports only one program to execute at a given point of time, such operating systems are called as single user operating system. Okay, so this is the hardware, and at the top you have the program or whichever the software which want to communicate with the hardware. Okay, and this program, so this program communicates with the hardware through an interface. This interface is called as ISA, instruction set architecture. So through this interface it will communicate with the hardware. So this is how single user operating system works. But nowadays most of the computers, you can say that nowadays we don't have any computer with single user operating system. So this is the very original style when computers were introduced. So they will be executing only one program at a time, and the entire resource will be used by that particular program, and whatever the program you are executing now, that is the operating system. So here you are executing this program is nothing but operating system. This operating system communicates with the hardware, but here also there is an interface. This interface is called as ISA, instruction set architecture. So that basically represents the architecture of the hardware. So depending on the hardware, the programming will differ. So what programming, how it should be accessed, that is defined by this architecture. Okay, see, you can say that one typical example for single user operating system is, say for example, elevator control. See, we have elevators. Okay, so elevator is a hardware, but there is a program which controls the elevator, which decides like whether the person should go to first floor, second floor, or ground floor. All these things are controlled by a program. So this program, so now it is what it is, a now the operating system which is running in the elevator is what it is, a single user operating system, because at any given time only one program is running, and that program directly connects with the hardware, and that program is nothing but it itself is the operating system. Okay, or you can take the software that is running in the washing machine, or you can take the software that is running in your smart TV. All these are examples of single user operating system. But nowadays we don't have any computers which supports single user operating system. Okay, so this is about single user operating system, and next we'll discuss about multi-user operating system. Okay, so this is about multi-user operating system. So in multi-user operating system, more than one program can execute at the same time. So we'll not have one program, rather you'll have multiple programs running parallelly, and the resources of the computer, the resources in the sense the hardware resources, the hardware resources of the computer will be shared between all these programs effectively. And how it should be shared, in what way it should be shared, who should get how much resource, all these will be decided by the operating system. Okay, so let us see this diagram which is in the right side. So you can see that at the bottom layer we have hardware, so which is the resources of a computer which should be effectively shared. Above the hardware what we have is operating system. So operating system is the software which can directly communicate with the hardware, and operating system communicates with the hardware through an interface. This interface is called as ISA, instruction set architecture. And at the top of the operating system you have many programs running, program 1, program 2, program 3, 4 up to program n. And these programs cannot access the hardware directly, rather it can access the operating system, but it accesses the operating system through an interface. This interface is called as application binary interface, ABI. So what you can understand from this slide, in the sense the programs communicate with the OS through ABI interface, and operating system communicates with the hardware through ISA interface. Okay, but here, so this is in very broad term, you can understand like this, but here there is a little change we will do. What? In the sense, we will not call this as programs, rather we will call it as process. Instead of calling it as program, we will call it as process. Instead of program 1, program 2 up to program n, we will call it as process 1, process 2 up to process n. Similarly, instead of calling this as operating system is a generic term. As we already discussed, operating system is a very generic term which includes both system software and application software, because operating system also comes with some set of applications. So instead of using the term operating system, here we use the term OS kernel. So what is a kernel? Kernel is a highly privileged part of the operating system which can directly communicate with the hardware. So in this diagram, let us make these two changes. We will replace program with process, and we will replace operating system with OS kernel. Okay, so this is the modified one. So there is no difference between the previous diagram and this diagram. The only difference is, at the bottom layer we have the hardware. The next level, instead of operating system, we say OS kernel. What is OS kernel? Kernel is a highly privileged operating part of the operating system which can directly communicate with the system resources, system hardware resources. And previously in the previous diagram, this was called as, mentioned as program, but here we are calling it as process. Why? Let us try to understand the difference between a program and a process. What is a program? A program is just a code. It is a collection of instructions. A program is a collection of instructions. So if you are writing a C program, say your program contains 5 statements, so that is a program. If you are writing a Python program, that is a program. Program is nothing but collection of instructions. And what is a process? A process is a program which is under execution. When a program is being executed, then it is no more called as a program, rather it is called as a process. Okay, so whatever is in the memory, so if something is in the memory and if it is using hardware resource, all those things, and it is using some states of the registers, then it means it is not a static program, rather it is a program in execution. So program in execution is called as process. Okay, So a process is an instance of a program that is being executed. So a process includes what? So process includes program code and other state, like it uses some registers, and each registers will have some value, and it uses memory, and also it uses some hardware resources. So all these things put together we call it as process. So process is a program under execution. And already we discussed OS kernel is a process with special privilege. What special privilege? It can directly communicate with the hardware. Okay. The rest is same. The kernel communicates with the hardware through the ISA interface, instruction set architecture interface, and these processes communicate with the OS kernel through ABI interface, application binary interface. Okay. So next, let us try to understand the goals of operating system. What are the goals of operating system? These are the three main goals of operating system. The first primary goal of the operating system is to provide protection and privacy. So protection and privacy for whom? For the various processes that is running in the operating, that is running on top of the operating system. So protection in the sense, process 1 should not be able to access anything of process 2. Similarly, process 2 should not be able to access anything of process 1. That is, the memory space allocated for process 1 is only for process 1. Nobody can enter there and they cannot access their somebody else's resource. So operating system ensures that that is done. So this provides protection and privacy. So the memory that is allocated for process 1, it is only for process 1 during that particular time. So this is the first primary goal of the operating system, to provide protection and privacy for processes. Processes cannot access each other's data. Next, abstraction. So the operating system, so basically the core job of the operating system is to provide abstraction from the underlying hardware. See, the hardware can be anything. The hardware can be anything. The hardware maybe it may includes lot of complexities, but operating system does not reveal those complexity to the processes. The processors don't mind what how complex the operating system, how complex the hardware is. It just submits the jobs to the operating system, and the operating system takes care of everything. So basically, it hides the details of the underlying hardware, and it provides one level of and it provides a level of abstraction. Okay, that is, the processors did not mind like what type of hardware is there. So if say for example, if a particular type of hardware hard disk is there, then the file should be saved in one format. If another type of hardware is there, then the file should be saved in some other format. These who will do this worry, or who will do this job? This job will be taken care by operating system. Processors did not mind about it. Processors will just say that save it in hard disk to operating system, and operating system will save accordingly, depending on the different type of hardware, and what input you receive it receives. Okay, so this is the core functionality of operating system. It provides an abstraction, that is, it hides the details of the underlying hardware. And the third goal of the operating system is to provide effective resource management. So OS control various resources of the hardware like processor, memory, disk, etc. So already in the first slide we discussed operating system performs memory management, processor management, device management, file management. So again, so it is the similar thing. So the processor decides like how much time the processor will be given to each process, and how much memory should be allocated for each process, and who should be given the disk access. All these will be decided by the operating system. So operating systems another important goal is to perform effective resource management. So these are the three goals of operating system: to provide protection and privacy, to provide abstraction from the underlying hardware, and to provide effective resource management. So the Next thing what we'll be discussing is virtual machine. So what is a virtual machine? See, virtual machine, in the sense, really it is not a machine, but it gives the feeling of a machine. Really it is not a machine, but it gives the feeling of a machine. Okay, so if you go through sometimes back, we discussed that there were two types of operating system. One is single user operating system, the other one is multi-user operating system. In a single user operating system, what happens, there is only one program which uses the entire hardware resource, whereas in a multi-user operating system you have multiple processes, and the hardware resource will be shared among each of the processes depending on the need, and that will be decided by the operating system. Okay, so virtual machine here, in the sense, what so virtual machine, in the sense, for every process the operating system will provide one virtual machine. It's not a real machine, it is a virtual machine. For every process, operating system will provide one virtual machine, and this virtual machine contains what? It contains a virtual processor, it contains virtual memory, it contains events, files, sockets, system calls, etc. So it means the process 1 is having one virtual machine. So basically process 1, what it thinks, in the sense, it thinks that I am using the entire hardware. The system has some hardware, okay, and process actually does not know what are the hardwares, all those things, but the operating system provides this entire package to process 1. So process 1, what it assumes, in the sense, the system has these only these components and I am using all these components. Okay, so the process 1 feels that I am using the entire machine. Okay, so this actually makes most of the job much easier. So it means that this is also one level of abstraction. So the underlying details of the hardware and how it is shared to different processes, it is known only to the operating system. It is not even known to the individual processes. The individual process does not know. Each process thinks that we are using the entire hardware. Okay, so the operating system gives one virtual machine to process 1. Similarly, it gives another virtual machine to process 2, another virtual machine to process 3, another virtual machine to process 4, etc. So this concept of providing a virtual environment for each processes is called as virtual machine. And who provides this? Operating system kernel provides this. Okay, so OS gives a virtual machine to each process. Each process believes it runs on its own machine, but this machine does not exist in physical hardware. So this is a virtual machine, it is not a physical hardware. Okay, so physical hardware is actually here. So whenever it does some activity, it does virtually, but finally it will be replaced physically by the operating system. Okay, so that's the point. So again, this process communicates with the virtual machine using this interface, ABI interface, application binary interface. Okay. Here is an example of virtual machine. So your system can have any level of virtual machines. So this is one good example of virtual machine. Let us try to understand this. So basically what it says, in the sense, let me come from bottom to top. See, this is your hardware, maybe your computer or your laptop. This is the hardware. Okay, so let us say that in your hardware you are using some operating system. It may be Windows, Linux or Mac or any operating system. So that kernel. Okay, so your kernel communicates with the hardware through ISA architecture. Okay, through ISA architecture, right? Now assume that in your operating system you have a virtual box. Okay, virtual box is something which is used to create a virtual machine of some other operating system. So you have a virtual box. Okay, this virtual box, so using this virtual box you can create any operating system virtually. You can create a Windows, you can create a Linux, you can create a Mac or anything. Okay, so this virtual box communicates with OS kernel through Windows, Linux or Mac OS ABI. Okay, application binary interface. And you assume that using this virtual box you have created one virtual operating system, that is Linux OS. You have created a Linux OS virtually. Are you getting? So your hardware actually runs one of these three operating system. On top of it you have a virtual box, and using this virtual box you have created a Linux, you have created a virtual Linux kernel, and this virtual Linux kernel communicates with the virtual box through the ISA architecture. Okay, and this Linux OS, which is a virtual machine, try to understand. Linux OS, it's a virtual machine, it's not your actual operating system. Your actual operating system is this one. This is the actual operating system, but your machine also has a virtual machine of Linux. On this virtual machine you have installed Python interpreter. On this virtual machine you have installed a software. This software is Python interpreter. Okay, so this Python interpreter, how it communicates with this Linux operating system, with Linux virtual machine, it communicates through Linux ABI, application binary interface. Okay, fine. Now this Linux, this Python interpreter. Okay, now using this Python, in this Python, this Python is an interpreter. This Python is an interpreter. Okay, and there is a emulator software in your system. There is a emulator software in your system which emulates RISC virtual machine. There is a emulator software in your system which emulates one type of hardware. Let us not go into the details of it. It emulates one type of hardware. Say you might have learned microprocessor. Okay, see, normally microprocessor program we do in the microprocessor kit. We do the microprocessor program in the microprocessor kit, because microprocessor program is meant for that particular processor. But you can also run the microprocessor program in the computer. Then what you should have? You should have a emulator for that particular processor or kit. So that is what here this emulator is nothing but it is an environment which provides microprocessor programming for this particular processor, RISC-V processor. Say you might have did microprocessor programming for 8080 or 8088 processor. Similarly, RISC-V is one type of processor or hardware architecture. Okay, so that emulator is using your Python interpreter. This emulator is created in Python, so obviously it will use Python interpreter. Okay, so this emulator communicates with the Python interpreter using Python language. Fine. So this is what? This is an emulator which is similar to an RISC-V microprocessor or RISC-V architecture. Now you want to write a quicksort program which executes on this RISC-V emulator. So it is something like writing a program for what you call microprocessor 8080 or 8088. Here you are writing a program for RISC-V emulator. What program? You are writing a quicksort program. Okay, so you are writing a quicksort program, and this quicksort program you are writing for which processor? RISC-V processor. So you will use the syntax of RISC-V. You will not use Python syntax. When you write a microprocessor program, how you will write? Move A comma B, load register, store register, etc., etc. So similarly, this is a microprocessor programming. So you are writing a microprocessor programming in quicksort, and what code you will be using? You will be using the code which is supported by the RISC architecture. Okay, so the interface here used is RISC-V ISA architecture. So the program, whatever you are using, it communicates with this emulator using RISC-V architecture. Okay, But again, this program, what it will do, this emulator, what it will do, it will convert it to a Python program, and that Python program will communicate with the Python interpreter using Python language, and the result of that will be communicated to Linux OS kernel, which is a virtual machine, through Linux IBA interface, and the result of that will be communicated to virtual box by Linux virtual machine through x86 interface, and this result will be communicated to OS, the actual OS which is running in the machine, through this particular interface. And now whatever the action that will be in real, it will be done by the operating system in the hardware. Okay, so you can see here how many virtual machines are running here, how many virtual machines this system has. It has 5 virtual machines. You see, 1 2 3 4 5 virtual machines, all these are virtual machines. Okay, so this is one virtual machine. Virtual box itself is a virtual machine. This Linux is a virtual machine. 3 4 5, so 5 virtual machines. So the point is, your computer can have any number of virtual machines. So that's what we are trying to explain here. Okay, so next, how the virtual machines are implemented. See, there are two ways. So virtual machine can be implemented entirely in software, but at a performance cost. If you are implementing virtual machines fully in software, then the speed will decrease. Okay, so if you want to have more virtual machines, then to that extent your hardware should also increase. Okay, so need hardware support for virtual machines. So if your system, if you want to run more virtual machines on your system, then your system, it is more advisable to have sufficient amount of hardwares. Okay, fine. See, now what we will be discussing in the sense, so we already discussed the difference between a program and a process. What is a program? A program is a set of instructions, whereas a process is a program which is under execution. Process includes the program and its states, its register states, its memory, all these put together we call it as process. Okay, so now there are two types of there are two modes in which a process can execute. What are the two modes? These are user mode and supervisor mode. These are the two modes in which a process can normally execute. Okay, so you know what is a process? A process is a program under execution, and this process has two modes of execution. What are the two modes? User mode and supervisor mode. Which process executes in user mode? All user processes executes in user mode. All user processes executes in user mode. What is meant by user processes? User process means the processes which are initiated by the user directly. Say for example, now I am running this PPT. This is a process. This is a user process. Or you are opening a game and you are playing. That is a user process. Okay. You are opening the Word and you are typing something. That is a user process. You are opening the Internet Explorer and browsing something. That is a user process. Okay. So all process which is done by the user are called as user process. The process that were executed by the operating system kernel or will be executed in supervisor mode. The process that were executed by the operating system kernel will be executed in supervisor mode. So operating system kernel runs in supervisor mode. All other process runs in user mode. That's it. Okay. So basically a process can be in two modes, user mode or in supervisor mode. But what you should understand in the sense, only the processes which were executed by OS kernel, only OS kernel process can work in supervisor mode. All other process will execute in user mode. Okay. So what is supervisor mode? What is meant by supervisor mode? So why we are now discussing about this? So supervisor mode is a privileged mode. Supervisor mode is a privileged mode that are uh, uh, so in a supervisor mode there are some privileged instructions or access to certain registers. It can be done only in supervisor mode, it cannot be done in user mode. Okay, so the core reason for discussing this is, next topic we are going to discuss is interrupts and exception. So so what is an interrupt and what is an exception, that we will discuss in the next slide. But before that, what happens in the sense, assume that you are executing a process. So when a user is executing a process, you are in the user mode, the process is getting executed in the user mode. Say now some interrupt happens. Now some interrupt happens. Interrupt in the sense, it may be some high privileged process may come in. So this process may have to, the currently whatever the process is being executed is getting executed, that may have to halt temporarily. Okay, and that high privilege process should be executed immediately. Okay, you can take that way as an interrupt. Okay, so when an interrupt occurs or when an exception occurs, what happens in the sense, the process will be transferred from user mode to supervisor mode. The process will be transferred from user mode to supervisor mode. So this transition will happen automatically. Who will do this transition? This transition will be taken care by the operating system kernel. Okay, so interrupts and exceptions are used to safely make a shift from user mode to supervisor mode. So how this shift happens, that we will discuss next. Okay, so let us say there is an exception. First let us try to understand what is an exception. See, exception is an event. Basically exception is a runtime error. So when you are executing a program, if any error occurs, these errors are called as exception. And if an error occurs, those errors should be handled. Who will handle that error? Those errors will be handled by the operating system. Okay, how it will be handled, that is what we are going to discuss. So these errors will be handled by operating system in supervisor mode. It cannot be handled in user mode. Okay, so let us refer this diagram. Say this is one process which is being executed. Okay, so current instruction that is being executed is II. Okay, and the previous instruction that was just finished execution was II minus 1, and the next instruction that is to be executed is II plus 1. Now let us say that when the program or when the control is in this particular instruction, there is an exception, there is a runtime error occurred. Okay, see, this is a user process, so it is executing in user mode. Now an exception occurs, so it is an exception, it cannot be handled by this particular process. So when an exception occurs, what happens in the sense, the control will be transferred to something else which is called as exception handler, HI. Okay, so this is handler instruction 1. So the process control will be transferred to the handler. Who will do this transfer? Operating system will do the transfer. Before doing the handler, before transferring the control, what operating system will do? Operating system will store the address of this instruction. This II, what is the address of this instruction? This instruction will be stored in a register. That register is called as PC, program counter. And also it will store the states of all the other registers of this particular instruction. When this particular instruction is being executed, different registers may have different value. So all those values it will store in memory or in stack. Okay. After doing all those precautionary things, what it will do, it will it will it will it will store this current instruction also in memory. Okay. After doing all these things, it will transfer the control to the exception handler. Now the exception handler will execute its instruction. So whatever the exception occurs, it handles by executing these instructions, instruction 1 2 3 up to n. Once finishing executing all these instructions, again the control will come to the place where it previously left. That is, once again it will come to the instruction II and it will start executing from here. Okay. So this concept is called as uh, exception handling. So here, this left side, the process is running in user mode, but when the control is transferred to the exception handler, here it is running in the supervisor mode. This exception handling will be done by operating system kernel. Okay, fine. Next we'll be discussing what are the causes of exception. See, there are uh, two cases. There are two things we discussed. One is an exception, the other one is an interrupt. So actually there is a slight difference between an exception and an interrupt, but in some cases these two terms are used interchangeably. But there is a minor distinction. What is an exception? Exceptions are usually referred to synchronous events. Synchronous events in the sense, exceptions are created by the current process itself. It is not created by something because of it is not created due to an external event. It is created by the running process itself. If a runtime disturbance was created due to the running process itself, those runtime disturbances we call it as exception. Example, illegal instruction. Assume you are executing an instruction, but that is not a legal instruction. That is not a legal instruction. So in that case, an exception may occur because your software doesn't understand that instruction, so it will lead to an exception. Or assume there is a divide by zero occurs. So you are dividing some x by y, and in runtime y becomes 0, so you cannot divide a number by 0, so that will lead to an exception. Or say illegal memory address. You are trying to access a memory location which does not exist at all. In all these cases, we call it as an exception. These are not called as interrupts. So these are not created by any external activity. This is created by the current running process itself. So these are called as synchronous events. Okay. Whereas interrupts are usually asynchronous events. These are generated by some IO devices. Say for example, some timer expired. So timer expired in the sense, so normally many activities in computer happens based on the timer. So once the timer expired means then some activity may have to be done immediately. So that will give rise to an interrupt. Say a keystroke. Assume you are typing something in the word, then every keystroke is an interrupt. Every keystroke is an interrupt. If you are not typing anything, the word will be open as it is. Whenever you type something, it is an interrupt, because this key press is happening in the keyboard. Keyboard is not a part of the word software. Okay, but you have to take input from here, so this will be called as an interrupt. Or a packet received. Say something related to networking. So you are processing the packet, you are writing a program that processes the packet, but whenever a packet receives, it should go and collect that packet, it should accept that packet. So that will be an interrupt. Okay, so disk transfer complete. So you are asking your application software requesting the operating system to transfer a file from memory to disk. Maybe it may take some time, say it takes 5 seconds. Okay, so during that time, the program which is requesting the operating system to transfer this program to the hard disk, it may do some other activity. Okay, but once the 5 second is over, then it will get an interrupt, or before that also, if the task is completed, it will get an interrupt. So okay, so whenever an interrupt comes, what the current process should do, in the sense, the current process should stop its current activity and it should immediately address the interrupt. That we call it as the interrupt handler or exception handler. Then the entire exception handler or interrupt handler will execute. After executing it, the control will once again come into the running process, and the running process will execute. Okay, so that is what is being shown in this diagram. So the process is being executed. The moment there is an interrupt or an exception comes, the control is transferred to the interrupt handler or the exception handler. Now the exception handler will execute all these instructions. After executing this, once again the control will be transferred back. So this slide again, it explains in detailly what happens when an exception occurs. Okay, so that I think we already discussed. It stops the current process at instruction I1, completing all the instructions up to I minus 1. Saves the PC of the instruction I1. PC means program counter. It contains the address of the current instruction. It saves that value. So program counter always holds the value of the current instruction to be executed. So currently when I1 is being executed, there is an interrupt. So whatever is in PC, it will store it in some location of the memory, and also it will store all other registers value. Then the control will be transferred here. Okay, then this will execute. After completing executing, it will restore that PC value. That PC value says that again you have to start from here. Okay, so that is what is being explained here. Okay, so again it is the same thing which we already discussed. So this is how exceptions or interrupts are handled. Okay, so again to summarize, there is only one difference between exception and an interrupt. Exceptions are synchronous events which are created by the running process, whereas interrupts are asynchronous events which are created by external events. Examples of exceptions are divide by zero, illegal memory access, etc. And example for interrupts are timer expired, keystroke, packet delivered, packet received, etc. Okay, now let us discuss some case study. We'll discuss two case studies. Okay, so here the operating system kernel, it performs something called as CPU scheduling. What is CPU scheduling? So typically a computer will have only one processor. Okay, the computer will have only one processor, but it may want to execute more than one process. You know what is a process? A process is a program under execution. So it may want to execute more than one process. So let us assume that we have two processes and these two processes wants to run parallelly. So then how the scheduling will be done by the CPU, so how the scheduling will be done by the operating system kernel. Okay, so let us understand. So this represents the timeline. So initially which process is running in the CPU, this represents the timeline of the CPU. Initially kernel is running in the CPU, only kernel is there, operating system kernel. It is running for 10 milliseconds. Okay, then there are two processes, so kernel understands. So what kernel does is, it gives control to process 1. It gives the control to process 1. Now process 1 is executing for how much times? 20 milliseconds. It set the timer for process 1 for 20 milliseconds. But before doing this, what it does is, it stores all these things. It stores the register value, PC, and address space of it loads all these things. It loads the registers, PC, and address space of process 1. Okay, so Process 1 may be using some registers, it may be having some address space, all these it loads into memory, okay, and it gives the control to process 1 and it sets the time for 20 milliseconds. So process 1 will execute for 20 milliseconds, that is from 10 millisecond to 30 millisecond. After 20 millisecond, what will happen? This timer will expire. Once this timer expires, this will create an interrupt, okay, timer interrupt. It will create an interrupt. Once this interrupt is received, again immediately the processor, what it will do, it will save the state of the process 1, whatever the current state of the process 1, whatever its registers value, its PC, its address space data, everything it will store somewhere securely in memory, and it will give the control to process 2. It will give the control to process 2, and it will set, before giving the control, it will set the timer for process 2 as 30 milliseconds. That is, next 30 milliseconds will be for process 2, and it will load the status of the process 2, whatever the process 2 state, that is whatever its register value, its PC, address space, everything it will load, and then it will give the control to process 2. Now again process 2 will execute for 30 milliseconds, that is from 30 to 60 milliseconds. Once again after 30 milliseconds the timer will expire. Then what it will happen? It will save the status of the process 2 in memory, and it will load the status of the process 1, and then it will set the timer for 20 milliseconds, and it will give the control to process 1. Now process 1 will execute for 20 milliseconds, okay, that is 60 to 80 milliseconds. Again after 80 milliseconds the timer interrupt will be created, timer expires and timer interrupt will be created. Again it will save the state of the process 1, and it will load the process 2, okay, and it will set the timer for 30 milliseconds, and it will give the control to process 2. Again process 2 will run from 80 milliseconds to 110 milliseconds. So this will continue until both the process finish its execution, okay. Say if process 1 totally needs say 80 milliseconds, then like this it will execute for 4 times. So if process 2 wants 150 milliseconds, then like this it will execute for 5 times, okay. So this is how CPU scheduling is done, and it is achieved by using the concept of interrupt, okay. So here you can see there is a small gap between this process 1 and process 2. So why this gap? Because during this time the operating system is doing all these things. So when the process are executing, it is in user mode, whereas during this context switch period, the control is with the kernel. So during this time it is in supervisor mode, okay. So whenever there is a exception or interrupt, the process state will be there will be a transition. It will move from user mode to supervisor mode, and the kernel will take the control, okay. So there is another case study, 2, emulating instructions. Let us consider that we want to execute this instruction, multiply x1 x2 x3. So this is an instruction in this particular architecture, RISC-V M architecture. This M means multiplication. So RISC-V M architecture, M represents multiplication. So what it is expected to do is, it is expected to perform this x1 equal to x2 into x3. This is what it is expected to perform, okay. But the question is, what happens if we run code from RV32 IM machine on an RV32I machine? So what this question states, what happens if we run code from RV32 IM machine on an RV32I machine? This M represents multiplication. Here you can see there is no M. So RV32IM supports multiplication instruction, whereas RV32I, it does not supports multiplication instruction. So the question is, this instruction MUL x1 x2 x3 can be executed in this machine, but it cannot be executed in this machine, okay. But assume that I have a virtual machine which is RV32I. It is not RV32M. But I want to execute this instruction. Then what will happen? That is the question. So basically my architecture does not support this instruction, because this instruction is supported only in this architecture, M architecture, whereas this mine is not an M architecture. So this instruction is not supported in this machine. So what will happen? It will create an exception, because it is an illegal instruction. So this will create an illegal instruction exception. So once the illegal instruction exception happens, what happen? Control will be transferred to the supervisor mode. That is, the kernel will take the control, and kernel will check, is there any handler to handle this exception or not. It will check. If there is no handler, what the kernel will do is, there is no handler, so what the kernel will do, kernel will just stop that particular process. That's all, because nothing else can be done. See, in this diagram here an exception occurs, there is a handler to handle this, so you are handling and again you are coming back. Assume such an exception occurs, for that there is no handler. If there is no handler, then the operating system kernel, what it will do, it will just stop the process. This process will be stopped or it will be killed. So here it is similar to that case, because you are trying to execute an instruction which is not available in this machine. So it will create an exception, and the control will go to supervisor mode. Supervisor mode checks whether this exception is available or not. It is not available, so it may abort. It may abort the process, or it may stop the process. Okay, the exception handler can take over and abort the process. But there is another option also. Interesting option. What is that? Sometimes if your operating system kernel is very smart enough, it can emulate the instruction. So here what is the instruction? It is just a multiplication instruction. This multiplication is not supported by this particular virtual machine, so it created an exception, and the control goes to the supervisor mode. The supervisor mode checks whether there is a equivalent exception handler or not. There is no handler, so it has only one option to stop the process, but there is something else it can do. It can emulate the instruction, but now the kernel can understand what it is. So it just needs to multiply these two values, and it has to give the result. So the kernel can do this job. So if kernel does this job, then how it will do? That is what is shown here. What the kernel will do, in the sense, it will return the control. It will again transfer the control to something called a CH, which is a common handler. And here it will try to understand what job it want to do. It want to do multiplication. So here there is a common handler to handle different operations. So handler 1 will be used for handling one operation, 2 will be used for some other, 3 will be used for some other, like that. Okay, so the control is given to common handler, and common handler will identify what operation. It is a multiplication operation, so it will give the control to the particular handler which performs the multiplication. It will perform the multiplication and it will return. Okay, once it is returned, again it will give the result to that particular user program. Okay, so this is how it can be done. Okay, so that's it about today's session. So what we have discussed, in the sense, we have discussed about, to summarize, we have discussed about what is an operating system, what is the role of an operating system, and what are the different types of operating system, like single user operating system and multi-user operating system. And then we have discussed briefly about virtual machine. What is a virtual machine? So we discussed the difference between program and a process, and we discussed that every process has its own virtual machine, and process does not know that there is some extra hardwares, it thinks that it is directly accessing the hardware. Okay, and then we have discussed what are the two modes in which the process normally runs. It runs in the user mode, and also it runs in the supervisor mode, and all kernel programs runs in the supervisor mode and all user programs runs in the user mode. That's what we have discussed. And uh, and then we have discussed about interrupts and exception. What is an interrupt, what is an exception? Exceptions are synchronous events that are created by the running process itself, whereas interrupts are asynchronous events that are created from external event. So whenever an interrupt or an exception occurs, the process will transit from user mode to supervisor mode. That is, the control will be taken over by the kernel, and it will run the appropriate exceptional handler or interrupt handler routine, and again the control will come back to the particular program. Okay, but before doing this transfer, what the operating system kernel will do, it will store the PC, it will store the register values. After storing all these things, the control will be transferred, and then the then the interrupt handler or the exceptional handler will be executed, and again once they finished execution, the control will come back here. But sometimes if you don't have the correct handler to handle the exception, then the operating system kernel may abort this particular running process. Or we discussed in case study 2, sometimes the kernel itself may do the job for the particular process. Okay, that is what we discussed in case study 2. There is an instruction, multiplication instruction, which is not supported by that particular emulator, and so it creates an exception. Now the kernel does the job. For that, kernel uses its own exceptional handler, and it does, and it gives back the result. Okay, and then we have discussed one case study 1, which is on process scheduling. How process scheduling is done, how the process is, how the control is given to one process and another process for a particular period of time. Okay, so thank you very much.